Hi everyone, my name's Rob, I'm a smartphone filmmaker, and today we're looking at Filmic Pro's in-app purchase of the Cinematographer Kit. And we're going to be looking at exactly what you get with that, and is it worth purchasing in the first place. Now before we get into that, I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for subscribing if you have already. If you're new to this channel, we do all sorts of things with smartphone filmmaking. We go through tips, accessories that you could use for smartphone filmmaking, as well as showing you the short films that I'm making with what I'm learning. And also we do extra little tidbits like this Filmic Pro tutorials. So if any of that is something that you'd be interested in, then hit the subscribe button below, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and the notification bell as well so you don't miss any of it. Now, without any further ado, let's get into Filmic Pro's Cinematographer Kit. Okay, so we're in the Filmic Pro app now. And as you can see on the bottom left, you've got the three different colours. You've got the red, the blue, the green mixing there to take you into your white balance. So if you go into that, this is the white balance you get with the original Filmic Pro app. Now, if you haven't bought this already, the Cinematographer Kit, you'll see a sort of see-through green diagonal line going across this whole grid and pictures here. We'll say more information. So you click on more information if you've got that there. And then that'll take you through to how much it is and what you can get with it. And then you can make your purchase, and then that'll be ready to use straight away on Filmic Pro, so you don't have to do anything else. You buy it and it's there. So yes, you've got top left icon that's in white, that is your white balance. The two on the bottom left, you've got these that come with the Cinematographer Kit. So if we press on these, the first option takes us to our different profiles. So you've got natural, dynamic, flat, and log V2. Now natural is essentially what you get with your native phone app. So your highlights, your shadows, all the details that you normally get in those are going to be exactly the same, more or less, as what you get in your natural phone native app. Dynamic is, I'll show you in a moment with some examples. Dynamic is way too contrasty, way too saturated, really, to use, and I don't think you'd ever need it. If someone has to use this for a film, please do put that in the comments below, because I'd love to see how someone's kind of utilised dynamics. It just doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest. Flat will give you more dynamic range. Log V2 will give you more dynamic range in the right lighting conditions. Now, I'm filming with an iPhone 6s here, so you're not going to get the complete maximum out of this Cinematographer app, the same as you would if you had a really modern, one of the newer iPhones, for example. So it'll still be a really good picture, but it won't be as good as you'd get with those newer ones. Something also just to note, if you've got an Android phone, this doesn't necessarily work with each Android phone as Cinematographer Kit, so it'd be worth emailing Filmic Pro or looking on the website to see if there's a list of phones that you can see which work with that from the Android section. iPhones, it works with everything, but Android, it doesn't necessarily work with all the phones. So, as we go into this, we can see below natural, dynamic and flat, we've got this black and white point, and we've also got the grey point in the middle. Now, in DaVinci Resolve, when I'm editing color grading, the black point is something you put on something black like the railings that you've got here in the middle. And in the white areas are what you use the white for, to make sure everything that should be white is white and everything that should be black is black. Now if you go back into the app, back into that section, this grey dot in the middle, I'm not really sure what it does. I think it might be the mid-tones. So if someone knows about this, let me know in the comment section. This is probably the one thing that stumped me on this. It's clearly bringing up the shadows and the highlights depending on which way you go. But I don't really know what that is exactly. So I think it might be the mid-tones. And on the top left here, you see you've got the red arrows. That takes you to default. So if you change lots of settings, so if we change the black point, change the white point, make it look all horrible, and then you think, oh, this doesn't look very good, press the red arrows, and that takes you straight back to default. Now, below these three options we talked about just now, you've got shadow and highlight. So what these do is they allow you to just get more detail in your shadows or your highlights. Now, to be honest, most of these things I wouldn't touch until post-production. But if it's something you want to get into and you find a way of making a clearer picture and getting more dynamic range by doing this, then absolutely try it. It's worth having a go. So we'll see from the shadows, if we take it down, shadows get more severe, especially on that candle. And as you bring it up, the shadows fade away a lot. So we'll bring that back to default. And the highlights in your highlights of the white areas, the areas that could be blown out, makes it much brighter, and you can bring it right down, and we'll press default to go back to normal. So yeah, I'm not sure why you'd use those options, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't, but the profiles I absolutely use. And if you go into the next option on this list of 3 on the left hand side, we'll go down and we've got your RGB adjustments. So you've got your reds, your greens, your blues within the picture. Now to adjust these, you tap and hold on the left hand side and you can bring them down, or you can bring them right back up again. So if you wanted to give different tints to the film look, you can always do that. You've got your blue as well, so you can adjust. Let's see if we can get that going. Come on now, there we are. Just the blue. So you've got saturation as well. Saturation. So if you look at the plant pot there on the right, you'll see that's getting brighter if I take it right to the end. And it loses that colour if I bring it back to the middle. So saturation is something you might want to use if you're filming in natural. I think pretty much everyone adjusts their saturation in post. Vibrance. Again, if you look at the green on that plant on the right. Now, all these options are quite fun to play with. If you don't have something to do post-production with, then these could be useful tools. But if you want to do really quality post-production editing, whether it's DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, or LumaFusion, which is a great mobile editing device, then I would leave that to post-production. But yes, these options are fun to play with. And some people have suggested that they play with saturation and vibrance to get a clearer picture, more dynamic range in post. I haven't actually seen evidence of this, but I've heard people talking about it and read about it. So these are more options you can play with. You might not necessarily use them. Just press the default button there as well so we can get back to normal. But these are all options that you get with Cinematographer Kit. Now the main reason you want to get Cinematographer Kit, if you go back into here, are your profiles. So I'm going to show you now some examples of the profiles that we have and images that I got outside in a sunny weather. So we can look at what differences are between natural, dynamic, flat and log v2. Let's get stuck in. Okay, so what we're looking at here is natural, dynamic, flat and log version 2 on Filmic Pro. So as you can see with natural, it's pretty much what you get from the native app. Dynamic, as I mentioned before, is way too contrasty. The shadows are so pitch black you can't see anything in them. Then you got flat where it's lighter, so you get more detail, especially in that sort of nook and cranny towards the left. And then same with log v2, but even more so. That nook on the left is getting way more detail than anything else. And in the right lighting, you can get a really clear picture and detail in your shadows. Highlights as well, but in this you're getting a lot more of the shadows, so I want to see what we can capture there. So with natural, in color grading terms, you'll be able to do a little bit with it. Dynamic, probably not a lot. Flat, you can get to do a lot more. And log version 2, you can do a lot more. So we're going to have a good old look at that in a second, and we'll do comparisons between non-graded and graded. Now, I'm not a professional grader, so this is just a very basic level of grading, if that, just to show you the differences and what you can get in the finalized product. What I'll do as well is I'll leave a link to Richard Lackey's YouTube channel. He's got some really good videos on color grading log version 2. So I'll put a link in there as well so people can learn from him. He's a really top color grader. And yeah, I'll leave a link in that for you, so I find that helpful as well. So let's have a look at the differences between the initial shots and graded afterwards. Right, so looking at natural, you're not really going to get a huge amount out of this, to be honest. I put a bit more contrast into this, which you can see from the sort of orangey patch on the right hand side. The shadows remain quite similar, maybe a little bit more detail, and I put the saturation up just a touch. But really with natural, there's not a huge amount you can do. It doesn't look bad, as you can see, but it doesn't look amazing. Now with dynamic, this is pretty much a waste of time filming in my opinion. Saturation is just too much. There's not a lot you can do with it in grading. The shadows are kind of irreparable, and there's not a lot you can do here. The grass I put a bit more saturation into, but really dynamic I just wouldn't even bother with, and this is kind of proof of that. So let's take a look at the flat profile instead. As you can see here, it starts to get a little bit kind of almost milky, the screen, when you go into flat. So you're going for an extra stop or so of dynamic range here in between your darkest areas and your lightest areas. So there wasn't anything really white in the shot for me to double check white balance with, but I'm quite happy with the white balancing I did in pre-shot here. And you can see it's starting to get more detail here in flat. As we go into log, you can see we can get even more detail. With a newer phone, like an iPhone 11 and such, You're going to get up to 2.5 stops extra of dynamic range with my iPhone 6s, closer probably to 1.5 really. But you can see the difference is amazing. Now if you're really good at color grading, you could probably get a lot more out of this and do a bit of denoising in the shadows. I stick to flat, but you can see here with log you can get some really good results and a lot of detail saved in the shadows as well. Well guys, I imagine by now you've probably decided whether you want to buy the Cinematographer Kit or not if you haven't already. For me, I'd let you know from a personal experience it is 110% worth buying. It's an in-app purchase, it's not that expensive, and you get a lot more for it in terms of post-production. So if you want to go into color grading, color correction, that kind of stuff, it's really going to help you take your footage to the next level and give you a lot more detail and dynamic range in the shots that you're getting. So as we've seen in the shots we've got before, you have a lot more detail in the shadows, you'll save a lot more detail in the highlights, and it just makes everything look so much better. So for $9.99, I don't think you can go too far wrong with this. As I said, it doesn't necessarily work with all Android phones, so you might want to look at the Filmic Pro website or email them to see if your specific model works for them. But it is a really worthwhile purchase, and it will really help you with your footage and make it awesome and stand out. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have, please hit the subscribe button below. It really helps the channel grow, and it puts a little pep in my step. And hit that like button as well, the notification bell, so you don't miss any videos. And thank you so much for watching again. Take care. Bye bye.